Hi everyone, this is just a brief instructional video on 1.05. It's a discussion board assignment. So for orientation, you guys use the discussion board already. So I'm not going to go over how to use the discussion board because you should have looked at that video for orientation. So I'm assuming by now everybody knows how to use the discussion board. So we're just going to basically talk about what the assignment entails and what's kind of expected of you. So 1.05, obviously, here in the content. So what you are going to do is you are going to have two articles. You are going to retrieve an article about a former and current president. So what that means, obviously, you're going to have the current president, and it can be any former president that you want, right? It can be absolutely anyone. So you're going to have a former president and a current president. You're going to consider observations on the two pieces. You're comparing and contrasting your former president news story with your current president news story, and you're sharing with your classmates on the discussion board what you have learned about the nature of news and how it's changed over time. Think about news values and trends in journalism to inform your response. Okay, so this is what I want to make very clear about this assignment. So what you're not doing is you're not comparing and contrasting the two presidents. That's not what you're doing. What you're comparing and contrasting is how the news was written. So if it were me and I was going to pick a former president, I would maybe find an article that was a little bit older. Because if you find something that was written 2 years ago about our previous president, there may not be a big difference in the two, right? So if it were me, I would try and go back and find an article that was written at least maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then I would find an article of today, and then I would compare the two. And remember, you're not comparing the presidents, you're comparing the news articles and how they were written. So these are some things that you want to look at. Has the language used in the stories changed over time? So look at that language. Does the very definition of news and news value seem different? News 20 years ago and news today, there's a big difference between the two. If you go back and read an article from 20 years ago, you're going to see a lot of variety and differences in that. So what do you see? What are you noticing is basically what that's asking. Does what passes as fact in the news stories seem different? That's also going to be a little bit different, right? So we see a lot of things on social media now, right? And in social media, the rule of thumb is don't believe everything you read on social media, right? And we know there's a lot of bias in writing. So certain news producers are very either biased, super heavy on left wing, or they might be super heavy biased right wing. Then you have a couple that might kind of fit in the middle somewhere, right? So writing of today definitely is biased compared to what it was 20 years ago. So you want to think about that. You want to see, are the facts really facts, right? What passes for facts? Are those facts actually what we really consider a hard-hitting fact, or are they just someone's opinion? So you got to look at that stuff. So is the presentation different, such as quality of photography, or enhanced multimedia? Obviously, we're in a way different age right now than we were 20 years ago. Multimedia is going to be completely different and way more enhanced in the 1920s, in the 2020s, right? So it's definitely going to be different. And then what are each story's attribution, and is there anything to know about similarities or differences? So, and again, we're not talking about the presidents, we're talking about the stories and how they were written, right? And what you're noticing about news in general. So this is what I need to make sure you understand for this. Be sure to make sure that you are referring back to the two articles. You read and support your ideas. So for example, if you have the article from 20 years ago and you tell me the pictures aren't as good, I kind of know that already probably. You have to tell me why they're not as good. Refers, tell me what's different. What are you noticing? What are you visualizing? What are you seeing that's making them different, okay? So that's really important. I have to see facts, and I need you referring back to the actual articles. Again, not comparing the presidents, but about how the news was written, right? Do not compare and contrast the two stories' news content, right? I don't want to hear about the presidents. You have to talk about news, values, journalism, reporting, writing, etc. in your response, okay? So you have to talk about that. So this is the other thing. So this is your first true discussion board assignment, and we have a few in our class. So what happens with discussion boards is they're all worth 20 points. Half your points come from your response and whatever you're writing. So 10 of your points is going to come from your paragraph that you're going to write about the news articles and how they're different and you know how they vary, right? You're going to compare and contrast. That's 10 points. The other 10 points of the assignment comes from you responding to 2 of your classmates. So basically 5 points for each response is what's going to happen. So if you only respond to 1 classmate, you're only going to earn 5 points. If you respond to both, you'll earn 10. You cannot respond and say, I agree, that's great, good job, well said. You can't respond with those things because that's not really a response. I would be giving you 5 points for basically writing nothing, right? So your response has to be at least 3 to 5 sentences long, and it needs to be something constructive. So what that means is if you agree with them, tell them why you agree with them. If you don't agree with them, tell them why you don't agree with them. If you're observing something completely different, or if you want to enhance or add to something they've said, you can do that, right? Your response has to be at least 3 to 5 sentences long for each person that you're responding to. So 6 to 10 sentences total for between the 2, right? So every discussion board will be set up this way. They're all 20 points. Your response or your post is worth 10, and then your response to your classmates is worth 5 points apiece and 10 total points because you're responding to 2 people, okay? So hopefully that clarifies how to do this assignment. I love when you guys do discussion boards because it gets you guys talking, and remember, we're only meeting 1 time a week. So these are really important for our class, and you interacting with your fellow classmates. Super important for you to get that dialogue going back and forth on these discussion boards. So if you want to respond and keep responding, you're more than welcome to do that, right? However, at least 2 responses to classmates is required for you to earn points for the assignment. I will tell you that what will happen with grading is you'll post, and if you're one of the first people to post, you may not be able to respond to somebody right away, so you'll get 10 points right away, right? So you'll have a 10 out of 20. Technically, that's an F. So until you reply, that 10 will stay 10 out of 20 until you reply. Once you reply to students, then I can grade, and your grade will change, okay? So just to make that clear as well. So if you have questions, let me know, but that's it for discussion boards.